Welcome, everybody, to Who's Your Band? I am Jeffrey Paul. Thank you guys for joining us. And we are here today. This is a special day because our co-host, my co-host, is celebrating his 47th birthday. Look at this handsome bastard. Happy birthday, Sean Morton.
Cheers to you. There's no Sambuca in this coffee. I'll tell you that right now.
Let me tell you, now that's dedication. It's his birthday. I know he has people over, and he is here to do the show.
No, like a typical old person, I had dinner at 4:00 in the afternoon, so I can have this podcast done at 7, so I can be asleep by 8:30.
You know what? I actually just left upstairs because we have people up there as well because we're celebrating a birthday as well. So happy birthday, Sean! I'm very happy. What'd you do today for your birthday? Anything special?
I worked. I went to CVS to pick up my prescriptions.
Wow.
I went to Walmart to get laundry detergent. I had dinner, and now I'm talking to both of you.
You better calm down, man. This is crazy. You went to CVS?
I went to, I had to get the medications.
Would you get Lipitor pills?
No, I had those already. I had to get other stuff. I'm low on folic acid, apparently, according to my doctor.
Oh, dude, you're older than me.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Before we bring in our guest, Sean and I last week we got to see Metallica. We went to the opening night of the North American leg of this monster tour, and we saw Mammoth open the show. We saw Pantera, and we saw Metallica. So I really didn't want to talk to Sean until the show, and I want to get your impression.
I appreciated that, actually.
Okay. Go ahead. What do you think about the show? Tell the listeners.
Mammoth was great. Mammoth was fantastic. They don't disappoint. If anybody doesn't know who Mammoth is, it's Eddie Van Halen's son, Wolfgang, which is great. Great band. Then Pantera, which I'm not really calling Pantera. I'm calling it the tribute to Pantera because only 2 of the members, because the other 2 are gone. They sounded phenomenal. And Metallica had to.
Well, before you get into Metallica, tell people who's in Pantera now.
Well, obviously it's Rex Brown and Phil Anselmo, the original 2 members, and since Dimebag and Vinny are no longer here, they have Charlie Benanti from Anthrax on drums and Zakk Wylde from Black Label and Ozzy's band on guitar.
And I thought both were excellent.
Charlie was phenomenal. Zakk did his thing, and he was great. And they had a hard time, Metallica, to follow them, and they delivered though. And from people that I heard from, multiple people said that the night that we went was better than the Sunday show.
I looked at the set list on both, and listen,
couldn't complain.
You're talking about between the difference between like a 90 and a 95.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're just talking about like it's not going to be bad. It's like and sometimes it comes down to preference. When I looked at the set list, I thought the set list that we saw was a little bit better. But I mean, either night, I think you would have gone, you would have enjoyed yourself. But that was a big spectacular. It was great to see a stadium full of rock and metal fans. That's always a good thing. And you sometimes just look around and you just appreciate it. It's like, think about where we were just like 3 short years ago, and that stadium was empty. And here you had it filled to the rafters and everyone having a great time. That was beautiful to see.
Loved it. Nice night, nice and chill. It was cool. We fixed my broken trunk. I loved everything.
Team effort there. Okay, so tonight,
yes,
we have a special guest, and I've been trying to get this guest on the show for a little while. I was fortunate enough to run into her at 101.5 FM, and we got to talking, and she is a doll. She is a comedian. She is an actress. She is a writer, and she's joining us on the show today for the first time. Guys, give it up for Julia Scotti. How are you, Julia?
Hi, guys. How you doing? That was a nice introduction.
Right, he's a lot nicer than I am.
That's what I was going to say. I'm glad it was you and not that other one.
Yeah.
He's been abusing me all night.
You can say it. He's a jerk.
No,
I know he's a jerk.
Totally.
No,
we all listen. He knows what he is. We know, but it's
happy birthday to you too, by the way.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you. It's a great day.
Is
Julia
it 40?
Is
He's 40?
He's 7.
47.
47. Oh, you look great.
I look fucking phenomenal for 47.
Okay. See, this is why nobody can be nice to you.
It's very true too. It's very true. Yeah, I'm
He's
not
not. He's
gonna.
not modest. He's not.
Oh,
He's
Not.
not
I give him a
appreciative.
compliment, and he's all up in my
look,
groove.
look. I'm gonna be honest with you. Normally, I say, "Hey, I'm the funniest comic on this show." Can't say it tonight. You definitely blow me out of the water. I'm
Oh,
definitely second best. No
Oh,
question about that.
stop already. So Jeffrey,
So
what?
Julia, you are a busy comedian. You have a lot going on. How long have you been doing this?
I say what years is it? I say 43 years because even though I had a 10-year gap, I was teaching, and that was still like comedy. So I count that as my comedy years. But I started in 1980, May 30th, 1980.
Let's go back to that for a second.
Sure.
You were a teacher. Where did you teach? I mean, did you go to school for teaching? What happened with that?
I was, yeah, when I was in my mid 40s, and I was really troubled, and my career wasn't going anywhere. I'd been banging around for 20 years, 20 something years. And I just decided I was trying to save a marriage, and I really wanted to do something that earned me a living. So I went back to college.
At 40?
40, what was I, 49 when, no, 48 when I started.
You were
48.
48 years old when you went back to college?
Yeah.
Wow.
I loved it. You know what? I
You may
couldn't
love
go.
it, but still that takes some type of courage, because a lot of people would feel kind of weird that there'd be the old person in the room that, what am I doing here? Did time pass me by? I love the fact that you just like, hey, look, I'm healthy, I'm going to do this. And you went and did what you had to do.
Well, the funny part was I went to an all-girls Catholic college, and I went at night, and it was co-ed. So I was still living as, my former self.
So
We'll
And
get into that.
yeah, but I mean, it was just kind of odd that I wound up choosing that college because they had a great teaching program. So I never went when I got out of high school because I had to earn a living. My mother was kind of nutso, so I had to support her. So I just never got to go. And
Okay,
that's what
so
I did.
you go to and where did you wind up teaching, and what did you wind up teaching?
I taught in Freehold Borough Middle School, and on Park Avenue there. I don't know if you know. Yeah, okay. I taught 6th grade language arts, and I also directed the plays, and I put together a drumming sort of a stomp unit. You remember the play Stomp?
Of course, of
Yeah.
course.
So the kids, there were kids that couldn't play an instrument, and so I said, and I always liked the troubled kids, so I said, let's do this, and they were wonderful. So that's what I did.
And
Did you like teaching?
Sixth grade's got to be really tough though, because like that's like
Yeah.
11, 12 years old. The hormones are all over the place. The
Oh,
attention
yeah.
spans are ridiculous.
I always say they came in September as 12-year-olds, and some of them left in June as 22-year-olds.
It's a rough year. That's
Yeah.
I taught middle school for a few years. And, while the teaching part, I think, is easy, like, the material, because it's junior high school level material. The hardest part of it is, they're like Julia said, especially the 6th grade, they're still basically babies. By the time that the end of the year comes, they've grown up a little bit. So now when you teach 7th and 8th graders, then it becomes a little bit easier, but they're still, you don't realize how young they really are. And they, you're trying to relate to them. To this day, I still teach 2 courses in the morning. I teach high school.
Okay.
Yeah, I teach Western civilization. I teach U.S. history in the morning. Just 2 courses, and I do it because I love it. It's
I love teaching too. I would never have quit. I had no intention of ever coming back to comedy, but you know how we are as comics. We don't do well with authority figures, and while I love teaching, I couldn't stand the administration and the rule. What they would do.
And this was a public school.
Yeah.
Yeah, public school teaching is horrible.
Right.
It's so bureaucratic, and the kids always seem to be secondary. I mean, look at our world today. The teachers unions dictate everything, and the last things they consider are the kids.
Well, I would say that about the unions. I'm a big supporter of the teachers unions. Teachers need the support. They need a union to deal with the crap.
Listen, I think you need a union.
Yeah.
I think you need unions, but I think sometimes unions overstep their bounds.
We would argue about that, but
Okay. But let's go back even for, because it's not a political show. Let's go back a little bit even further. Okay. So first of all, did you enjoy teaching, right? You liked it?
I loved it.
You
Yeah.
loved it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of let the cat out of the bag here a little bit earlier. That you did transition, all right?
Right.
I'm very curious about that, because when you first started comedy, you were a man, right? You were
Yes. I started as Rick Scott.
Rick Scotti.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many years did you do that?
20. I actually left comedy. My last gig was on the anniversary of my first gig, exactly 20 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that planned?
No, I'm a little I think I'm a little on the spectrum. It just worked out that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
is that a bad thing to say? Because
being on the spectrum?
Well, here's the thing. Like, back in the day, we really didn't hear a lot about the spectrum, right? You really didn't hear a lot about that. This is really more of a last 15, 20 year kind of thing. I also think that I'm a little bit on the spectrum. I feel like,
you think so?
Listen, guys, I don't want to get.
By the way, Sean, I'm wearing these glasses just to piss you off. I know how much you hate them.
Yeah, it's okay, Woody. We're fine. We're good.
But Sean, I think it's fine. I have family members who are.
So do I. So do I. I just think that, like, there's like an old thing where they say just stop doing it, you look like an asshole. I don't believe in that. I believe that there's actual ticks.
No, I believe I am, and I know that yeah, I believe I've been told that by.
What does that mean exactly, to be on the spectrum? What does that mean?
There's all different levels of like autism, and back in the day they would call it Asperger's, but like now they don't, because of the whole affiliation with the Nazi.
And learning disabilities and processing,
right, learning disability,
processing
things of that nature. So,
but there's also, we talk on the gender spectrum too. As long as we're talking about transgendered folks, it's the gender is not absolute. It's you're not either totally male or totally female. There's no such thing, but there is a gender spectrum too, and some of us are closer to absolute female, and some of us are closer to absolute male. But everybody's got a little bit of both in them.
Now, do you think it's more personality wise, or like attitude, or
even sexuality?
Are you talking like actual physicality, or
sexuality is different from gender identity?
I think so too.
Not even connected. I looking back at my childhood, I know I was definitely drawn to female things. It's just, but in the neighborhood I grew up in, that gets your ass kicked, and so.
But I'm sorry, but you started out, Julia, if I'm right, you started out in California?
No.
You never lived in California?
Born and raised in Jersey. I started my very first gig was in a Chinese restaurant in Paramus, Jade Fountain restaurant. And my home club in New York was the Improv, the original one on 44th and 9th.
Wow. Okay. So I guess you're right. You're in your 20s at this time?
I was 28 when I started.
Okay. Okay. So you're 28 years old. You're Rick Scotti. You're doing the New York City scene. You're doing Jersey. What kind of success did you wind up having?
Well, I was lucky because I got in just before the boom started happening. There were no Jersey clubs. In fact, this one I did in Paramus was the very first out of New York club. There was stuff happening on Long Island and stuff starting to happen in Jersey. So I caught the wave. And one of the reasons I worked a lot back then was because I had a car. That was a big plus. I could, in those days, yeah. Well, in those days, the comics would all meet in front of the Improv or the Catch or whatever. And
who were you with? Do you remember who comics you were with?
Oh yeah. In fact, the very first night, if you watch comedians at cars getting coffee, Eddie Murphy's on one of the shows, and
I've heard of him.
Yeah, but he has a list that Jackie Martling gave him because Jackie was the MC at this Chinese restaurant, and on that list is me, the guy named Teddy Kalaluka, who's a very well-known character actor now. But Eddie was on that show. Seinfeld was on that show. Jackie was emceeing. Who else was on that show? I mean, it was a who's who of comedy today. They all went on to become, except for me.
Well, you're doing pretty good. We'll get to your success in a little
Okay.
bit. But I'm very curious. So you're 20 years old. You're working Jersey. You're working the city. You're working with some pretty big names who are
Well,
still
they
kind
weren't
of
at the time.
no, no, right.
Oh,
Like
right. Yeah, yeah,
they're still
yeah.
kind of like working it out. Were you able to make a living at this? Were you working every night, every weekend?
I was going, I would say I started to make a living where I could do it just probably about 3 or 4 years in, because the boom happened. There was
Right.
work everywhere. I mean, I can remember as a feature act, turning down work because it didn't include airfare. Okay, that's how, you know, that's how much comics were in demand back then. Um, and then it all fell apart.
So you doing? Are you married at the time? Do you have a
Yeah, I was
girlfriend?
married too, and that's one of the reasons I I couldn't devote as much daytime to it as I wanted to. See, also the business part of show business is hanging. You got to hang. You got to hang in New York during the day.
Absolutely. Yep.
You got to play softball with in Central Park with the leagues. They don't have them anymore, I don't think. But I couldn't do that because I had to compromise and and work. I'm sorry about this, Shadow.
No worries. So you're kind of like you're doing your stuff and coming back and forth. What kind as Rick Scotti and you're in it for? What were you talking about? What was your premises? What were your topics? What are you talking about
I've
on
always
stage?
talked about what was going on in my life at that point. I was never a topical, current events kind of comic, but I talk about my marriage. I talk about having young kids. I talk about, uh, my horrible sex life with my wife. That was typical stuff of the times. It was funny. I mean, but then there was stuff that popped up. I don't know if you've seen the documentary on my life, but
I did.
I want to talk about that too.
okay. Well, I'm going to reference it now. There's a section in there where I'm watching myself back then, and I'm talking about transgender folks, and I'm not a happy way. I'm trying to get out of this. I'm so sorry about this. And I realized at the time I was dealing with the issue. I thought that I was gay, but that wasn't it. Nobody knew anything about being trans back then. So
How many
uh,
years did you deal with that? Like how many years
probably
was it?
my whole life in retrospect. At least
High school, you kind of knew.
it started popping up late teens that something was not. I hate to use the term right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, we know. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm when you say it's popping up, what's popping up? Is it feelings?
just this feeling. It's like, um, I found myself being very jealous of women, in wanting to experience what they were experiencing, and I didn't know why. I mean, it was and I just assumed, well, maybe it means I'm gay. I mean, and that seemed to be a logical.
Were you attracted to men?
Not really. I know this is hard to understand, but there wasn't a whole lot of information about being trans back then.
Exactly. That because that leads me to a question I wanted to ask.
Go ahead.
And this is where I think when we use words like courage and brave, I don't think we always use them in the right spots. But I have to think that in the 80s and in the 90s, when like you said, there wasn't a lot of information about this. Did you have a hard time people accepting you? Did you face prejudice? And did you, especially when you started to transition, did you start to face prejudice early on with people saying, I don't want to deal with this person? This
Well,
isn't
I didn't
right.
come out. I didn't come out until 1999 is when I came out.
But still, even back then, I don't think it
Yes.
was kind of like a big, like people
Yes.
were like it is today. I think now there's a lot more acceptance. I think back then, I mean, I remember, and this is why I say that. I had friends that were transgendered, and I remember like walking in with them and people poking fun and and
Well, yeah. I
and
mean,
making comments, and I'm like, this cannot be easy.
no, of course not. I mean, I'm trying to get out of this goddamn light here.
Hmm.
My first day of teaching, my first day ever in a classroom, I I got through the day. You know how hard it is to teach kids, especially 12-year-olds. And I performed in front of thousands of people at the time. That's nothing compared to standing in front of a classroom full of kids for 6-7 hours a day. Yeah. So the end of the day, there's a little note on my desk, and I go, oh, that's nice. One of the kids, wants to welcome me to the school. And I open it up, and all it says is, everybody thinks you're a man. And I just was devastated. It's the first day of school. After I had worked so hard, to go to college, to graduate with honors, and,
and what year was that?
Huh?
What year was that?
That would have been 2001. It was right after 9/11, October. I came in late in the year because one of the teachers was out on.
I think Jeff hit the nail on the head with something too. I mean, it really, if you look at, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about a scene from Ace Ventura about how Sean Young was playing a transgender woman, and like their reactions in the movie to it were like, if you look at it back then, it's a very, like, you're laughing at it, but like now, if you watch this movie, which is now almost 30 years old, your whole opinion is like, well, there's nothing to laugh about this. Like, it's just the way that
especially since Sean Young was hot.
Well, yeah, and there was always a controversy about, well, why did you just have a trans woman playing a trans woman's part?
I think even in 2001, I mean, it was probably towards the very end of the non-acceptance. I would think. I think towards the middle of the 2000s is when you really started to feel that things were starting to loosen up, and people were starting to get a little more tolerant and educated and aware of other things that were going on.
Yes, that there was an absolute all-out war now on the right. With, I don't need to get political, but with against trans people, they need a new target every time. They had black people, they had gay people, and now they got us. We're in the front. We're in the
you have to also understand too, that's also a very small portion of that party as well too, because there's people who will actually lean towards the right. And I'll be brutally honest. I mean, financially, I lean towards the right, but I'm very, very liberal socially. Like
I've always maintained, I don't care what you are. I don't care what your political leanings are. Just stay out of my life.
Right. It's got to be separate. And as long as the bottom line is just treating people like they're human beings and treating everybody equally. Right. And that's when it comes down to it. I don't give a shit what you do with your life. I mean, I don't care if you wear dopey glasses like Jeff. I don't care if you get eye surgery, whatever it is, as long as it makes you happy and you're not hurting anybody, who gives a fuck? I really don't.
Well, AGT did, change my life. I mean, I call it, it was the mother of all coming out stories. Because I came out to 13 million people.
Yeah.
At once.
Let's bring that up. Yeah. And then
let's backpedal. I'm going to backpedal one quick second because
Julia was at my very first show. Yeah.
Yeah. The first time Julia got back on stage after the hiatus, I was actually on that show.
Now at this point, you're Julia Scotti.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I was hosting at the Comedy Works in Bristol that night. You did a guest spot.
Julia was doing the guest spot?
That was the first time Julia was back on stage since the transition.
Let me tell you how that came about. I had lunch with Chris Rich.
Mm-hmm. Was she the
she was the headline?
Oh, yes. She's great.
She is. I love Chris, and we're old friends, and I love her dearly. And we met for lunch a couple of weeks earlier, and she was appearing at the Works, and she said, "Why don't you come and do a guest spot?" She goes, "You want to come back to comedy." And I had no intention of it.
Were you 10, was that 10 years? You said
10, yeah, almost 11. Yeah.
Shit.
So I knew I had only two criteria, and one was to be totally honest, and the other was to be fearless. So go ahead, Sean, finish up the.
And I can remember, I mean, I was still fairly new at that time. I think I was.
How many years? I was gonna say, how many years in were you?
I think it was 2010. I was going through my old journals the other day, and I found
it was 2010. I was only 2 years in. I mean, I was still hosting there, So
yeah, I found my journal entry from right just before I did it, and I was writing about how I needed to put material together, what I was going to talk about,
And at the time, I'm still new. But like I'm older because I started comedy at 32, so I'm not like a 19-year-old shithead who doesn't know anything. I still understand.
No,
Like,
you were a 34-year-old shithead, but
right.
yeah.
I also had more life experience, and I understand. Like, I understood. Like, okay, this is somebody who not only has not been on stage in 10 years, but hey, you know what? Something pretty fucking big has gone on in their life at this point. You know,
And
and I
Comedy Works in
appreciate it.
Bristol is kind of a blue collar.
That's a weird room. I mean,
Yeah. How did the audience accept you?
Go ahead.
I mean, even it's perfect what you said. It's a hard fucking room because they are very middle America. Like they are, you know, just drinking beer and that whole area. If you know the area, Jeff, it's all used car
I
dealers.
know that. Yeah, it's not that far from Beth Salem.
That's all it is. It's used car salesmen and fucking sex toy stores and roll your own tobacco. It's fucking middle America right outside of Pennsylvania. But I remember you getting laughs that night. I truly do. You know, and then, you know, I took a step back years later once I started following your career and just saying, like, you know, what a fucking night that had to be. That had to be nerve-wracking that night.
It was because I knew once I said it, I needed to say it publicly. I needed to get it out of my mouth and not live in shame about it. That was part of it. You know, carrying around this shame of you know, my own self-imposed shame.
Right.
And I realized I was, by not being proud of who I was and what I was putting myself in another prison again.
Did you feel ashamed of yourself?
You're kind of made to feel ashamed of yourself back then.
Not because of that, not because you didn't say it. Like you kept it inside and didn't say it out loud. Because I got to imagine once you went on stage and said you know who you were, it had to be completely liberating.
Oh, absolutely. The only thing I can even equate with is coming out on AGT in front, you know, on national television. Yeah. But Sean, I went back to the works a couple of weeks later, you know, having lifted that burden off of me, and I killed,
Where'd you go back as?
I went back as Julia.
No, you a feature, a headliner.
Oh, I don't even know if I was on the show. I think I was guesting, you know, but Mike Kaplan was great. I go a long way back with him, and he's always been supportive of me, and
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Mike's a good guy, and
he came to see Sean when he headlined at Catch Rising Star.
Did he go? Yeah, he doesn't forget. You know, well. I go back to the beginnings of the Comedy Works and when they were in Philly. That's how far back I go with that organization. And Joy was Jimmy were close friends, and yeah, so they've seen my career almost from day one. And
yes,
and so. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so let's go back to something you've been alluding to. You had one of the most memorable appearances on America's Got Talent. Over 1 million people saw and streamed you coming out on the show. Can you talk us through it and take us what it was like?
Right before it was taped, so I was home when it aired. I knew what was going on. I couldn't say anything. They don't want you to talk about it. But just before I walked out on stage, the British producer said, "Are you going to do it?" And he meant two things. He meant, "Are you going to come out?" And he also meant, was I going to drop the F-bomb? Because I had a different punchline for that joke. And he said, "No, do it. They'll love you." I go, "It's easy for you to say. You're back here where it's nice and safe." But I got out there, and and you guys know, when you're on stage, you have this whole team of men and women working on your set for you. And I got to that point in my set, and I just said, "You know what? I might be able to do some good here. I know I'm not going to win this show, but I might be able to do some good." I said, when he asks me, I'm going to tell him the truth. But I wanted to wait till after the set, because I wanted the set to stand on its own.
It did.
Yeah.
So who are the judges when you taped the show?
Howie, the German woman whose name I can't remember.
Heidi Klum.
Yeah. Well, one of the Spice Girls. She was great. I loved her.
Mel B.
Mel B. Right. And and what's his name?
Was it Howard Stern?
No, the British guy. What's his name?
Oh, Simon Cowell.
Simon, yeah.
Oh shit, that's like an all-star cast right there.
Yeah, I want to call him Simon Garfunkel, but that's what happens when you get old. I couldn't think of his name. Yeah, so Howard had, this was the first year without Howard.
Okay.
Howie took his place. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was life change. He said, I told the producer as I walked out, he goes, your life's never going to be the same after this. And he was right.
And obviously it helped. It didn't hurt, but that's still
Oh
a risk.
no, it helped a lot. Yeah. So, suddenly clubs who were, wouldn't talk to me before, suddenly they're interested in me. My money went up. I was getting, requests for interviews. I got a record deal. Yeah, it changed my life.
Who's your audience?
But let me just say something. I said to my manager at the time, I switched over to Tom and Jenyo from Omnipop. And I said to Tommy, I said, listen, we've only got 2 years here. We may not even have that, because by the time the next season rolls around, I'm yesterday's news. So we got to make hay while the sun shines.
You got to strike while the iron's hot.
That's exactly right. And that's what we did, So what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, so now who's your audience now? And I guess your audience has changed from like when you first started, took the 10 years off, and now is it a different audience? Do you play before? Basically, is it anybody? Do you play specialty shows? I mean, who's your audience? Who comes out to support Julia Scotti?
My shows are kind of universal, have universal appeal. I don't. There's some, gay comics or trans comics that cater to that demographic, and that's fine.
That's right.
I want to be everybody's comic. I want you to be able to come to my show and not feel like you're singled out or that you're another. My whole show's about inclusion. So I will say that 98% of my show are straight people. I do get a lot of, during Pride, I did a lot of Pride shows though too. So it's whoever wants to come.
But who's attracted? Who's buying the ticket? And I have a reason for asking this that I don't think you know about.
Mostly middle-aged straight people.
Okay, here's the thing, Julia Scotti.
Yeah.
Okay, Sean Morton, you're going to be working at my club on October 28th.
Okay. Yes, I know.
Yeah, I didn't think you knew that. I had
I know.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay, I didn't think you knew that.
I didn't know
that I had. Okay, yeah, I was like, so when Carol told me when we were talking about him, this is for the audience. I have a Laughing Stock Comedy Club up in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and we have women of a certain age coming in. So when Carol told me the lineup and Julia's name was on it, I couldn't have been happier. So last night we had a packed room. We had Gaspar Randazzo in the house, and he attracts a lot of like teachers, teachers are middle-aged women. When I told them that you guys were coming, particularly Julia Scotti, they were very, very excited. They're going to be coming out October 28th.
Who, the audience?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, because after the show we hang out, we talk. There's a saloon in there. I mean, it's a fun place. And so when I told them that we have women of a certain age coming out, and they're like, "Oh, who's on the lineup?" You were the first name I brought up, you and Carol, and they and they were like, "Oh, I love Julia Scotti." This is the response you're getting. Okay.
Let me tell what the audience, what women of a certain age actually is. So a good friend of mine, one of my dearest friends in comedy, Carol Montgomery.
Yeah, Sean. I'm sorry, but Sean was the one that really hooked it up. He was like, "Yeah, I'll talk to her. I'll set it up for you."
Listen, I'll take my finder's fee. But yeah, so Carol,
we got you coming next month.
I'm there next month. Yes.
Yeah, you guys are playing actually a month apart.
29th, correct. I'll try and leave the stage left for you. You know what I mean? So Carol's an old dear friend of mine. I tell everybody this without any hesitation. There's two people in this world that have helped me more in my comedy career, is Carol Montgomery and Vanessa Hollingshead.
Jeffrey Paul.
They are the two biggest,
two superstars,
two monsters who I have been able to, grow under their wing, and Carol decided after a very long career to develop a show called Women of a Certain Age.
Funny Women of a Certain Age.
Women of a Certain Age, yeah. It's basically all female comics over the age of 50, which I think is an absolutely brilliant idea to do for comedy. And I really don't, I'm not a big fan of like when you see those shows and there's like 7 black guys on the show and then 1 black girl. Or
You love the Italian show,
like,
right?
oh yeah, the Italian comedy shows are so much better. All those
they're great because no one has no one has the premise. You know, my mother used to make the chicken cutlet. She used to do it in her sleep. She had it under her breath. She make a chicken cutlet. Did she making chicken cutlet?
You know what that was like?
I get, I can't tell you how many times somebody after a show will be doing meet and greets and people go, I love your show, but you know who I really love? That Sebastian Buttafuoco, whatever his name is. I go, yeah, I know. Everybody loves him, Yeah,
it's a great premise of the show, and honestly, during the pandemic, in I think it was like 20 months, she wound up getting 3 Showtime specials on this. That's fucking unheard of.
Let me tell you a story about the one I was on. I was on the second one.
Well, you were supposed to be on the first one.
Yeah, you know the story.
I know. I don't know the story, but I know you were the breakout star of the second one, so I want to hear this.
So, well, she books me on the first one, and I'm thrilled. I can't wait. I was going to have some minor back surgery, but they wanted to get. I had to get a chest X-ray first because I smoked at the time. And the doctor, I come back. The doctor says you have an enlarged heart. There's fluid around your heart. I said, oh, okay. Well, that sounds good. It's enlarged. That means it's nice and healthy. And no, that's not what that means. So they go to do to put a stent in me or whatever they do. He stops in the middle of it, and he goes, "There's so much blockage. I can't do this. We're running up to Newark, New Jersey, to Beth Israel Hospital up there. You need heart surgery." So I wound up having quadruple bypass and a pig valve installed and another valve replaced. I almost died. Who knew? So now this is in December. I'm supposed to tape, I think, what Carol's first show was in January.
It was like 2 weeks before, I think, or a week before.
It was maybe 3 weeks after my surgery. So I call her, whatever, and I said,
"Were you able to speak?"
Well, barely. I sounded like, remember how Babe Ruth sounded at Yankee Stadium when he was dying? Carol, I'm gonna make the taping. I'm gonna. She goes, "You sure?" I go, "Yeah." So about a week before,
we'll do it for Gehrig and the kid in the stands. Yeah.
So there
William
was no way.
Bendix will play me in a movie horribly.
Exactly.
Yes.
I couldn't even walk to the mailbox without, needing to sit down. And it turned out I couldn't do it. But she said to me, she goes, "Look, I don't know if there's going to be a second one. But if there is, you're the first one I'm going to call. You're at the top of the list." And true to her word, I think it was March. She called me. We did it, I think, in July. But that's the kind of friend she is. That's the kind of human being she is.
Just an amazing human being. And
yep.
This industry is just full of garbage. I have no problem saying it. It's full of garbage, and she's just an absolute diamond in the rough.
Yeah, absolutely. She's just a sweetheart. And she and I go back a long, long way. We go back to the beginning. We started almost same year, maybe a year apart. I think I got in a year earlier than she did.
She was my agent for like 2 weeks.
Oh, is that right?
Until she quit. Yeah.
I was gonna say until she saw your act, and then
I know, because I headline casinos. Anyway, so continue, Jeff.
No, that's just Carol. Anybody ever says anything bad about Carol?
No, listen, I will go to war for her. She's one of the things that I really would ever do.
But go to the mattresses.
No, but we're excited to have you guys in the show. I mean, it's going to be great. We're actually going to move it into a bigger room. We're going to move it to
great,
with a bigger stage, and we're going to make it bigger. And we're going to try, of course, we're going to try and sell as many tickets as we can. How did that change? I mean, there's a lot of things here still, but how did that take you to a different level?
What, the Showtime?
Yeah, with more funny women of a certain age.
Well, you look at the lineup on that show, and
both of them are insane.
Well, I'm in there with some heavy hitters, and fucking Carol. She tell you what she did to me that day of the taping?
No.
Oh, well, I'm trying to remember who was the lineup. It was Carol Leifer, the woman from
was Lunell on
Caroline
that
Ray. Who?
Lunell
Was on it. I mean, it's just right down the line, one heavy hitter after another. She comes to me about an hour before the show. Carol, she goes, "Oh, by the way, you're closing the show." I go, "What? What?" I hadn't really worked a lot since my surgery. I was still, you know. I go, "No, you can't do that to me." She goes, "If I didn't think you could do it, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't." I mean, she says, "I know you can do it." And I did. I did the set. You see the set, but they put me, when they aired this special, they put me in the middle, I think. I forget who. I think Lunel closes it on the actual special, but I closed it.
Probably because on TV she had a bigger name. She's in the
Yes.
Borat movie, but every critic
That wasn't Lunel. That was
said you right.
Steve.
But every critic had said that Julia was the breakout star on that
Why-
Really?
show.
I did.
Yes.
I never read any reviews anywhere.
I read
I mean,
everything
most of the people
that I made notes
were
people
very
on.
established comics. You had Caroline Ray, who's been around in the mainstream for 35 years.
She had a series.
Yeah, and Carol Leifer wrote for Seinfeld,
Yeah.
and Thea Vidal, who's been an actor and a comedian forever.
Yeah.
Kelly, who's probably one of my top 10 favorite comics in the world. I absolutely love her, But yeah, you stole that show. You absolutely did.
It was a total surprise to me because I was just very nervous, having to close that show. And they just, man, they would just, they were just with me the whole right from Jump Street. They were great.
How many shows did they do to film that one?
They've done 3.
No, how many when you filmed your episode?
Oh, we only filmed the one.
Really? So it's one.
Tapings, yeah.
Yeah, that was a one take show. The only thing, the Caroline Ray had to come out and do a pickup for her closing bit, I think, because she wasn't happy with the closing bit, so she did another one.
I think that's a little risky, because if it would have been a shitty audience, right?
Yeah.
What do you do? What would they have done?
You know what?
Editing.
Yeah, I mean, but you look at that lineup and you go, I don't think anybody's going to have a hard time on this show.
There's 6 heavy hitters on that show.
Yeah.
You're not going to put a special together to put on Showtime, and you're not going to have 6 comics and like 2 of them you're going to be like, I don't know. You're going in with like your 18.
All of her specials have done that.
Okay, so now you're working. You're on Showtime. You're on TV, and then I think it was maybe 2 years ago you were in a movie called Bros. Yeah. So was acting something? I think acting is something you've always done. This wasn't your first time in a movie, was it?
I had the lead in a short film called Relatable Joy, and it was it was nice. It gave me a nice reel and a couple other things. But acting has never been that important to me. But I realized it's part of being in show business, part of being a comic. It's an alternate means of making a living. And so I said to Tom, I said, "Look, just start sending me up, and I'll, whatever happens, happens." And when Bros was cast, Billy Eichner took a lot of shit for that movie, and I don't think it was justified. But he cast everybody in that movie was an LGBT member. Everybody cast in it. The crew was mostly LGBT. I applaud him for what he did, and I had a very small part. I actually had 2 scenes, and they cut one of them.
Still, you got to do it. It's fun, right?
Yeah, it's a credit.
Absolutely. Jeff was in a movie too, by the way. I don't know if you're
a couple of movies, but yes, what Sean's alluding to, I worked with Scorsese in The Irishman.
Did you really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I did. I filmed 5 scenes. I think 3 of them made it into the movie. It's kind of a long movie. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, I did. I've seen it. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I look very, very different in it.
I'll have to look for you.
Yeah, but
still very punchable, but you do look at the movie.
Yeah. So before we get around to music, because we got to wrap this up soon anyway. We kept talking about this a little early on. So after Julia's whole life, and I mean, listen, it's such an interesting story. It's such an interesting story that they wind up doing a documentary about Julia, and it's called Funny That Way.
Well, it's called Julia Scotti, Funny That Way. And there's a reason I say that, because
Julia Scotti, Funny That Way. Okay, I wasn't sure how you want. Okay, so tell us about it, and tell us how people can watch it.
How it got made, you mean?
Just tell us. This gives like
Yeah, I was working in Nantucket, did a show with Jane Condon, wonderful Jane Condon.
Sure, I know Jane,
And,
nice lady.
Yeah, she's a great
nice,
lady.
nice lady.
Yeah. And after the show, we're doing meet and greet. Most of my good stuff happens at a meet and greet for some reason. And this lady comes up to me. I'm introduced. I think Jane may have introduced this. Her name is Susan Sandler. I know nothing about her. And we go out for drinks afterwards. And we're talking about my career. And she's asking me all these questions. And as it turns out, somewhere in the conversation, I find out she wrote the movie Crossing Delancey. And
sure, big movie.
Yeah, and the play too. And she's a professor of screenwriting at NYU Tisch, Tisch School of Filmmaking.
Yeah.
She's got major cred, right? So I had been thinking about doing a one-woman show at that point, and she offered to, if I needed some help, she was going to want to work with me. I said that'd be wonderful, and I said she wanted to see my archives, so I brought a whole bunch of crap up to New York where she lives and left it with her. And she called me about a month later. She goes, "This is not a one-woman show." She goes, "This is a documentary." She goes, "Have you ever thought about it?" I go, "No, who thinks about a movie about themselves? No." She goes, would you trust me to do it? I said, "Sure," because comics will agree to anything, never thinking it would ever happen. Right. So we signed contracts, and about a month later, there's a film crew at my door. And 6 years later, the movie was finished. She did a great job, I thought.
It was a brilliant movie. I love the way that they really focused on the relationship with your son too.
Yeah. She's quite a woman. She's one of my heroes, one of my personal heroes.
You're actually a hero, a friend of mine. Actually, I think I may have mentioned this to you once or twice, but I have an old friend named Sarah. When I was friends with Sarah originally, Sarah was Tommy. Tommy transitioned into Sarah. Now, the question that I have is, do you feel that like your personality and general mood and everything is the same in both your previous life and this life? Like, do you feel like you've changed, or at the core, are you still the same person? Because Tommy was a fucking asshole, right? Tommy was a real asshole. And guess what? Sarah's a real fucking asshole too. So Sarah has not changed at all. Really hasn't. Got blue hair now, looks totally different, but at the core is basically the same person.
I think because I did it later in life, I'm freer. I am, I'm not encumbered with all those, the burden of living a false life, and that sometimes can make you into an asshole because you're just so angry and sad and bitter that you lash out. I'm much mellower than I was.
Okay.
My comedy has become a lot more honest, I think, since it came out. So it's a little. I'm still at my core. I'm basically the same person, I think.
Because as comics, we're all fucked up to begin with, no matter what.
Yeah, but I'm more centered now.
Damaged and broken a little bit.
Yes, very damaged, very broken. But I'm in a better place now than I've ever been in my life.
I think because you're in an honest place.
Yes.
And listen, I think you come out, you feel liberated, you say what you have to say, you are who you are, and people who are going to accept you, fantastic. People who aren't, you know what, you don't need them in your life. You don't need toxic people in your life. But the thing is, you're living life on your terms.
Exactly.
And I think if you can do that, it doesn't make a difference. You're gay, straight, whatever the fuck you are. It's, we're people. And I tell this to Sean, I tell to people all the time, stay away from toxic people because they bring no value to your life.
Yep.
Why surround yourself with that? You don't
but
have to be.
I did. Up until I.
Of course you did. Because you were dealing with shit.
Yeah.
And now that you kind of like figured it out and you're living life on your terms, of course you're going to be happier. And you know what? No matter what, I'm a straight dude. Not everybody likes me, believe it or not. I know I know that's hard for you to believe. A guy this talented, good looking.
How could this be?
Right? How could not everybody like me? Some people don't like me, and you know what? Fine. I don't have
Change
to
the channel.
100%. Yeah, and let's bring it over to this, talking about change the channel, because we have 10 minutes and we have not discussed one drop of music.
Okay.
If you don't, we've been doing the show, what, 3 years, Sean? Julia easily has the most eclectic list. So I just said, hey, Julia, give me an idea of who you like to listen to. You have a favorite band, artist? And then I get days of texts. Most of these bands I love. I mean, the first couple, the Rascals. No one brought that up on the show. Phenomenal. Sly Stone, Santana, Bobby Collins, favorite band, by the way. Then you go jazz, Count Basie, Dave Brubeck. You put down on the list, and this is definitely on mine, early Chicago. What do you like early Chicago? Like 24?
25, 64. I opened for Chicago, and here's why. They weren't always my favorite band of, that jazz rock era, until I worked with them and saw them live. And I was like, oh my God, these guys are phenomenal,
Phenomenal.
Oh. And
tell us about that. Where'd you open for them?
The Broome County Arena in Binghamton, New York.
How long ago was that?
I was still Rick, so it had to be in the 90s maybe.
So in the 90s, that is, oh man, you had Bill Champlin. Was Peter Cetera still in the band?
No, I don't think so.
So that's Jason Schiff. That's still a great band at this time.
The blonde kid.
That's Peter Schiff.
Okay, but that's who.
Yeah,
it was. He was the lead.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. He played bass and sings.
Yeah, he was great. They all would go.
They're all great.
Oh my God. And
Dwayne,
it's funny.
I think Dwayne Bailey may have been the guitar player who is, I don't know if you know who he is, Sean. Phenomenal. One of the best guitar players on the planet.
I remember the lead guitarist being just insane. But the horn guys, and I can't remember the names of
James Pankow.
Pankow was cool. We're sitting where we
his brother's an actor.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, we were at dress rehearsal, right? So we're sitting, everything, we're having some food backstage before the show, and I'm hanging with the guys, and I'm like, look at me, I'm hanging with Chicago. Anyway, he says to me, how can you do this? Because it's a 5,000 seat room. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, how could you go out in front of all these people and do it? I go, you're fucking Chicago. You work stadiums. He goes, yeah, but if we suck, we have the music. We can go to we can look to somebody else. You're out there alone. I go, yeah, thanks for telling me that as I'm about to walk out in front of 5,000.
How was it? How was it, opening up for Chicago in an arena?
It was my first time ever doing something like that. I was scared to death. And it's a whole different way of working, and it actually served me well when I did AGT, because it was the same kind of room.
But it's different because that no one's there to see you, and it's in a way it's almost like gangster comedy. It's like, okay, we're here to see Chicago, but before we do that, everybody sit down and shut up because a comic is coming on stage, and they're like, who the fuck is Rick Scotti?
But you can't, as a comic, you can't think like that.
Of course not.
You because you're self-defeating at that point. I went out with the idea that they were there to see me.
I love that. I love that confidence.
But I killed. It took them a couple of minutes to get, settled down and listen to me. But once they listened, the waves of laughter were coming from way in the back of that arena, and it's just, you could feel the vibrations. It's wild. It's a wild sensation.
How much time did you do?
What did I do? I think I did like 20 minutes, maybe.
Wow, man, that is amazing.
Yeah, they were great. The guys were great.
But let's go down this list, continuing, Sean. The Temptations, amazing.
I saw live.
Great. And now it starts the second part that you said me, and again, multiple days, multiple texts. Louis Prima. Do you know who that is, Sean?
Of course I know who Louis Prima is.
Okay. Not Louis Prima Jr.
Not Junior.
No.
The original. Sam Butera, Keely Smith. Great. They were great.
Now she's getting into like a cool jazz side. Not yet. Listen a little R&B. Jazz coming up. Lou Rawls, Sam Cooke.
Who I worked with again. I worked with
Lou Rawls?
Yeah.
Where'd you work with Lou Rawls?
I worked with him at Club Benet.
Oh, fuck. Do you remember Club Benet in New Jersey?
Oh yeah, of course. I live right here. I live right
used
near
to
there.
play there.
He gave me one of the greatest pieces of advice that I tell newbie comics today. I was nervous. I was scared. He was my first celebrity that I ever opened for. I adored him as a performer. He sang with Sam Cooke and Bring It On Home to Me. You know that song?
Yeah.
The callback is yeah. That's Lou Rawls on that record with Sam Cooke. Yeah, you listen, you could tell. But Sam, I went to say hello in this dressing room, and he saw I was nervous. He goes, "What's the matter?" I go, "I'm scared, man. I'm kind of a new comic." So he takes me outside into the parking lot, the Club Benet. He's wearing his tuxedo and everything, and he goes, "Listen, people are here. You're here on this gig because somebody thought you were good enough to be on this show." He goes, "And that's good enough for me." He goes, I have no reservations about you going out there." And he said, "I know you're going to go out and do a great job." And he calmed me down, and I had a blast. And he was in the wings when I got off. He goes, "Told you."
How did you get these gigs? Were you represented at the time?
Well, it was pretty well known at the time. I didn't have representation, but I had a good reputation as a comic, a reliable, comic. So I mean, and you learn to schmooze,
And like you said, it's a hang.
it is.
So Julie also likes Ella Fitzgerald.
Who I also saw live.
That's great. The great now here's where she's trying to show off a little bit. Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich.
I saw both. Well, I saw Buddy Rich 3 times in my life.
But these guys, when we do a lot of like tribute type shows and countdowns, and Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich's name came up a lot when we were talking drummers.
Yep.
Yeah.
You also had Etta James, Billie Holiday. Nice. Okay. Now here's a band, okay, that I was just talking about. I love Chicago. I love Earth, Wind and Fire. But another band that you got to put in that category, fucking Three Dog Night. They are great. That's Chuck Negron, right?
Mm-hmm. Taylor Negron's cousin.
That's right. That's right. Do you know who they are, Sean?
Yes, Jeff. I know who fucking Three Dog Night is.
I don't know. Listen, you go see Life of Agony 4 million times. You go see Gaslight, and I don't know.
Yeah, and I've seen Ray Charles, and I've seen Ray Price, and Willie Nelson, and Chris Christopherson, and Etta, and fucking Lena Horne.
Okay, tell us all the shit.
Tony Bennett and Katie Lang.
Okay, Janis Joplin.
Yeah,
love her.
Okay, yeah. I mean, really. I mean, this is a heck of a list. Do you use music to kind of like to get yourself pumped up, calm down? I mean, when and if you have a walk-up song, what do you like coming up?
If a walk-up song would be anything, funky, it's got to be, it's got to be loud, got to be, just moving. It's got to have move. But my age has a lot to do with my musical taste because I was born really on the cusp at the end of the big band era. But my parents loved that music, early rock and roll, 60s, 70s rock and roll, 80s, and a lot of breakthrough jazz happened at that time with Brubeck and all those people. So, and Basie, and I had, I've always tried to have an open. I was a drummer. I don't know if you knew that about me.
I did not know that about you.
I started out as a drummer. Yeah,
it makes sense about Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich.
Yeah, and I worked.
Also, Chicago. Danny Serafin was also a monster drummer.
The problem they had, from what I understand, was Danny had a tendency to speed up. And it always pissed them off that he couldn't keep great time. And I think that's one of the reasons why they bounced him.
I thought he was a very intricate drummer. And when you listen to because he's the original drummer on the recording of 25-624, that fill at the end of the song, that's a great drum fill.
Right. Well, Dino Danelli was up there for great drummers. Dino started out. He used to hang at the Metropole in Manhattan. Do you know about the Metropole Cafe?
I do remember the Metropole Cafe.
And Gene Krupa played there a lot, but Dino worked there, and he studied not with Gene, but he kind of patterned himself after. He was a great drummer. Well, there's some great drummers out there.
Julia Scotti, you are a very, very interesting person. This hour went by unbelievably quick. Please tell the listeners where they can find you, how they can follow you. And what can we do? How can we let people get to see Julia Scotti?
There's a lot. You can go to my website, www.juliascotti.com, SCOTTI, not Y. My schedule is up there. It's all up to date. We're adding dates for the fall all the time now. So, you know, come on out, and you can find me on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. We're starting to do social media now, which I'm only about 15 years late on that.
What's your next goal?
My next what?
Your next goal.
My next goal. That's a good
And how
question.
and how long do you think you're going to continue doing comedy for?
Well, I got to answer the second question until I'm dead on stage. That's my goal. I have no
But
chance.
that's a good question about, you know, what's your next goal, because you're in so many ways you've reinvented yourself. But again, isn't that really why we're on this planet, to evolve? You don't want to be the same person that you were 10
No,
years
I
ago.
wrote a play during COVID. We did a couple of stage readings of it this year. I'd like to see it produced. I haven't. There's a couple of theater companies that have expressed an interest in producing it. I love to write. And you know, comedy though, Mike, I want to keep evolving as a comic. I feel like I'm breaking through to a level that I've never been in before. So I'm happy about that.
And listen, folks, if you want to see Julia Scotti, come out there, Laughing Stock Comedy Club, October 28th. If you want to see Sean Morton, we'll have him out there on September 29th. And we have Julia, I said October 28th.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Guys,
thank you for having me. Thank
Julia,
you for having
thank
me.
you so much, man. You know, we really appreciate it. This was great.
Oh, my pleasure. I had a ball. You guys were wonderful.
Thank you. And hopefully I'll see you soon. Otherwise, I'll see you in October.
Sounds good.
All right.
Take care.
Guys, continue to subscribe, continue to follow, give us 5-star reviews. We appreciate every single one of them. Till next time, everybody, take care. Bye, guys. Happy birthday, Sean.
Happy birthday, Sean.
Thank you, dear.